I'm going to show you how to do the same thing, that is install the SQLite JDBC driver and configure it in Netbeans, but this time for Windows. So just as before, if you kind of scroll down in lessons, you'll see that the JDBC topic is there, and then what you need to do is just download the jar files, and hopefully they will do that. And then if we kind of can we open that, let's just kind of open that, and we need to extract it. Kind of just extract it to your favorite place. I usually just sort of take the defaults there, and we can kind of leave them as long as they kind of do it. It should come up in a second. It's a little bit slow today. So this is there are 3 jar files that we need. One is the SQLite JDBC main driver. The other 2 seem to be associated with the logging. And you just kind of leave them right there while we open Netbeans, and we have our class project. So what we want to do is create a library using these jar files. And so to do that, I'm right-clicking at the top of the project, going all the way down, selecting Properties, then clicking on Libraries over here. And there we have a module path and a class path. We want the class path. So click the plus next to that, and we want to add a library. So now hopefully when you created your project kind of back in week 1, there was a little checkbox that said, copy library files, something like that. Hopefully you did that. If you did, then you should see this copy libs task, which you want. So now if you don't, we'll have to kind of fix that. But let's create a library. We'll call it SQLite as a class library. And now we want to add jar folders. So we'll click on add the jar folder. And then let's see, it would take me to documents, but what I want is the downloads piece, which is right here. And then here are the SQLite files. Come on. And we want all 3 of these. So we click add jar folder. It says, are we sure? Yes, we're sure. And we want to see them right there in there. And then we want to add the library and verify that it's on the class path. Okay, now really the next thing is to really kind of verify that it's there. We'll just kind of create a very simple little thing. I'll put it in a package called JDBC, or a sub-package of our class package here. And just show you the basics of connecting to it now that we have this. So let's create just a new main class. Come on. Okay, for some reason my PC is not behaving itself. It doesn't, I think it's objecting to the fact that I'm trying to run Windows on it. Okay, so let's okay, hello SQLite. And you always start with a hello-like program. All we're going to do is we're just going to connect to a database. And one of the nice things about SQLite is that we don't have to actually create it. All we need to do is connect it. So when we connect, it's going to, if it's not there, it's actually going to create the file for us, which is kind of nice. So we'll just give it a name. And I'll hard code this. Just because, this is to just verify that everything is working properly. So I'm going to call it hello SQLite.db. The two main extensions are either .db or .SQLite. .db is fewer things to type. Now, this is where we connect with, I'm going to call it a DB URL, as I did when I was doing it on the other one. And we start with, there's something called a prefix. What the prefix is it's a, it's like a URL, but it's not out on the internet or anything like that. It's just something to identify that, in fact, in this case, we're connecting to an SQLite database using JDBC. So if we try to fix those imports, see, I want to use something which is in, notice org SQLite JDBC prefix. Seeing what that is. And if we can see exactly what that is, we see it's a public static final string. And it's JDBC : SQLite : and so that's our prefix, and we want to concatenate that with our database name. Okay, now the next thing, what we need to do is create a connection. Now, for some reason, Netbeans is very wonky about identifying Java's SQL package. So I'm going to do something I normally don't like to do, which is to import the star here. And it's sort of saying it's unused. We're going to use it in just a second. Normally I don't like to do that, but in this case it just saves a lot of headache. So we want to create a connection, and now this connection, like many of these things, is something where it can kind of go wonky. It's also going to be throwing some exceptions in case stuff goes wrong. And so we're going to do this. We want to make sure we have a finally that closes it. Now, we get the connection from something called a driver manager. And what the driver manager does is we can get the connection from the URL. Now, let's say we say unreported SQL exception. We'll surround the statement with the try-catch block. And this is where we want to do a finally. And we've seen this with a number of other situations where we're opening up system resources. You want to make sure that you always shut them down. And what could go wrong? If something goes wrong, connection might be null. If it's not null, then we don't. If it's null, we don't need to do anything, of course. But if it's not null, we need to actually close it down. So we'll close it. And in fact, closing it could throw another SQL exception. So we want to, oops, no, we don't want to do that. We want to surround it with a try-catch. Generally, it's bad form to just kind of rethrow exceptions like this. You want to catch them and deal with them. Now, the interesting thing is that, okay, right now we have enough to run to see whether or not this works. The indication that it works is that we don't get an error. So if we just run the thing, it grinds some words a little bit, and then, okay, it was successful. And now the interesting thing here is that we've actually created the database simply by making this connection. In fact, if I go to my input here, see, here's our Here's the database that we just connected, the correct created. Uh, and so that was done by this statement here. Uh, so the driver is very smart in that regard. It says if we get a connection and I'm looking for a file, if the file doesn't exist, then it will create it, and if it does exist and it's a database, then it'll hook up to it. Now, of course, if we try to point to something that's not an SQLite database, then of course we'll get lots of errors. Okay, so that is